Joining me now is Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis. The Minneapolis City Council has recently approved more than $100 million in pandemic relief funds. How are the city leaders planning to use some of that to support their small businesses? Let's find out. And with us, we've got Mayor with us right now. Mayor, it's great to see you. Look, Minneapolis, in just a very real way, has been ground zero for a lot of the stresses in this country across race, business, pandemic. You've had it all. Can you just give our audience kind of a quick snapshot of when it comes to small business recovery and getting everybody in an inclusive way in that equation, what's at the top of your list that has to happen to get out of being a story of being a victim of all of this into now moving beyond that?
Steve, you're right, and thank you so much for having me here today. Minneapolis has been at the epicenter of a global reckoning around racial justice. And what we want to be working towards is not just getting back to normal, but blowing by it. We want to be pushing for full transformation in everything that we do. And so when we talk about these Rescue Act dollars and we talk about recovery, it's not just recovering, but it's pushing for a full-on transformation in terms of how we traditionally have done business, making sure that we're centering our BIPOC communities in our economic inclusion decisions, that we're making sure that people have stable and foundational assets like affordable housing, making sure that public safety is inherent regardless of what neighborhood you're in, and that we've got police reform that we're working on as well. So these are all things that we're working on. And as part of that $100 million that were passed in urgency, and we're proud to be one of the very first cities in the entire country to do so, we wanted to make sure that those three key assets, so it's about $37 million for economic inclusion with a focus really on small business. That's about $7 million or so for affordable housing. And then we've got about $12 million for public safety as well. These are all key areas that we need to be pushing for in the immediacy.
Mayor, when you're out in the community and you're meeting small business owners and minority-owned businesses, BIPOC owned businesses, what are you hearing from them that they most need in this time? What kind of support? What does that support look like beyond the dollars?
I don't think any small business is created exactly the same, nor are they experiencing the same elements within the city. That being said, I think there's a few key pieces that they're asking for. The first is they want to have those foundational aspects that are necessary for any business set up from the get-go. That means safety. Workers need to be able to head into their business and feel safe. Customers and patrons need to be able to go and shop and have both the reality and the perception of safety. That's a critical component. They're also asking for capital that is flexible. All of these businesses are experiencing an array of different difficulties. Some of them need to get their awning fixed. Some of them need a facade improvement. Some of them need to buy a new mop basin. All of these things end up adding to the expense that they're experiencing. And that expense is only compounded after a pandemic, after some of the unrest that we saw after George Floyd's murder. And these are things that we need to be helping out with. And so that's how we've structured the money. We've made sure that it's flexible. We've made sure that it's getting out urgently to those that need it most. And we're making sure that it's pressed out in a way that we can jumpstart our economy and revitalize our city.
Look, part of the story, unfortunately, of minority-owned business and the lack of racial justice we've had in this country is a lot of people have been excluded. You know, the City Council of Minneapolis has approved $100 million of pandemic relief funds. You want to focus $37 million of that in small businesses. Are there things that, about wiring in, particularly minority-owned businesses and small businesses, that where Minneapolis can look at from being, ground zero of this story to being ground zero of the next story, that we're now going to do it better than other cities, that they're going to be, kind of economic equation there that will make other cities envious? I mean, I know that's a big question, but, you have to have sort of an aspiration when you're looking out. What is Mayor Frey doing on that front?
Well, you took the words right out of my mouth on that front. And one of the first steps was not just making decisions ourselves, but making sure that we are listening to a series of Black and brown leaders, by the way, 3 of whom I believe are on a panel coming up just shortly here between Kenya McKnight Ahad and Henry Jimenez and RT Ryback. I mean, these are all people that helped out substantially on the Minneapolis Forward Community Now Coalition, which was built to make sure that Black and brown leaders and community members were not just individuals that had a seat at the table, but were also key beneficiaries in this process. And so that Minneapolis Forward Coalition came forward with a series of recommendations. It would take hours to get into all of them, but I'll focus on just a couple here. One of the key pieces that they said was that we need Black ownership. And not just ownership of the business, but ownership of the underlying real estate. Because here's the way, as you mentioned, that we are going to blow by the old normal, and we're going to blow by the way that other cities have done things in the past. We're going to make sure that not only these Black and brown business owners own their own business, but they own the underlying real estate, so that when we see gains from the economy, when those values get increased, these business owners that have helped make these neighborhoods and corridors wonderful to begin with don't get the boot because the rent gets jacked up. Rather, they'll reap the benefits of those gains in equity. They can pour those gains back into their business, making them even more successful, and in turn pour those benefits back into the community itself. And so we've put, at this point, millions and even tens of millions of dollars into this commercial property development fund that is specifically geared towards helping these BIPOC community members purchase their own business and real estate. And we're going to make sure that that happens along some of these major corridors that were tragically hardest hit by COVID-19.
Just real quick before we take an audience question, I think the other thing is about the psychology of the city. You talk about the panel coming up, and I really look forward to speaking with them. And I've been out to Minneapolis with you before. I guess the question is everybody on board in this city, or are there folks that are holding out that look at the course that you and your colleagues and council members have set up on rebuilding and reinvesting? I'd just like to know, are you all united, or are there some real problems in bringing around some other stakeholders in the city?
Well, I think there's never a unanimity of opinion, but what I've gathered is that throughout our city, there is a collective sense of urgency to do things differently. There is this notion that, through all of this crisis that we've experienced, all these crises that have been sandwiched on top of one another for this last year, that we're seeing every day as an opportunity. And someone said to me just yesterday, it was actually Jonathan Weinhagen, who's also on the Minneapolis Forward Coalition, that, we've been talking about how this last year has been unprecedented, and that's true. But this last year has also been remarkable. It's been remarkable to see how people have stepped up, stepped out, in some cases just come out of the woodwork to get our city through this. I think that's inspiring. And right now, as I mentioned, there is this collective sense of urgency to push back on all of these systemic inequities that have been here for decades, for generations, even hundreds of years. And now's the opportunity. We want to be that example for other cities to follow throughout the country. If there's something that we would want 5 and 10 and 20 years down the road, it's the ability to look back and say, you know what, we didn't get it right. We had been falling short, but we made the necessary changes, and we were an example for others to follow.
That's great. Mayor, we have a question from our audience from Russ Adams. Russ?
I'm Russ Adams. I'm the manager of Corridor Recovery Initiatives for the Lake Street Council. My question is related to that vital commercial corridor. It's been estimated that in order to reconstruct, repair, and rebuild along Lake Street, it will cost more than $250 million. Where will that money come from?
So the question was about Lake Street specifically, which was one of those corridors that was both hardest hit by the pandemic, as well as the unrest following George Floyd's murder. We have put in a substantial amount of money prioritizing areas like East Lake Street through a combination of the American Rescues Act, and there's tens of $millions in that fund, and there will be even more as we allocate the remaining $270 million. We've allocated city money to make sure that the buildings can get rebuilt as quickly as possible, that the facades can be improved, that the area has lighting and trash cleanup and all of the other facets that we know that will help to stabilize and then transform these corridors. We also have some state money that's in there as well. And so it's really a combination of city, state, and federal money that'll be streaming into areas like East Lake Street. And I'm excited. You know, it's going to be tough. It has been tough. It will continue to be difficult. But you know what? We have a whole lot of people rallying around a common cause right now. And that cause is transformation. That cause is making sure that we're, walking and chewing gum at the same time and working on different projects that can help to benefit. One great example that I think Russ is actually familiar with is this notion of rebuilding resilient. We want to make sure that the new buildings that go up are not just economically beneficial, but are environmentally sustainable. We want to be reducing our collective carbon footprint. We want to enable these businesses to reduce their energy output. That's part of the work that we have underway right now. And the program was so successful that we actually doubled it through the American Rescue Act itself. And so that's just one example of many. I know, Russ is also the work around affordable housing is also key and foundational. And we've been putting quite a bit of resources into making sure that we've stabilized our communities that are experiencing homelessness, making sure that we provide that next rung on the ladder so they can pull themselves out. And then we're investing record amounts of money into affordable housing. And there's a dearth of it nationwide, and Minneapolis is no exception.
Well, thank you for that. And I should say that's Russ Adams, who is manager of the Corridor Recovery Initiatives of the Lake Street Council. Thank you for that question. So Mayor Jacob Frey of City of Minneapolis, thank you so much. It's always great to talk to you. Good luck on these big plans.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Thanks for the conversation.